Now you said there's a story that goes with you and her. Do you mind sharing that story?
We used to go roller skating a lot and go out to Belvedere roller rink, which is not existent now, but I remember one time I asked, there was 3 girls that were skating together, and they were all nice looking gals, you know, and I happened to pick the one closest, asked if she wanted to skate on I don't know, they had a couple's choice or something, and she said no, she didn't want to. Well, Cynthia said she was hoping I'd ask her, but she was in the middle, and I got scared. And I thought they'd all say no. Pretty soon everybody stopped skating, and it was declared that Pearl Harbor had been attacked.
Just before 8 a.m. on December 7, 1941, hundreds of Japanese fighter planes attacked the American naval base at Pearl Harbor near Honolulu, Hawaii. The airstrike lasted just 2 hours, but it was devastating. The Japanese managed to destroy nearly 20 American naval vessels and almost 200 airplanes. By the time the attack was over, every battleship in Pearl Harbor was damaged. More than 2,000 American soldiers and sailors died in the bombing, and another 1,000 were wounded. The attack on Pearl Harbor was preceded by a steady deterioration of relations as the Roosevelt administration sought to slow Japanese expansion in the Pacific. The Japanese government believed that the only way to solve its economic and demographic problems was to expand into its neighbor's territory and take control of its import market. To this end, Japan declared war on China in 1937. American officials responded to Japan's aggression with a battery of economic sanctions and trade embargoes. They reasoned that without access to money, goods, and essential supplies like oil, Japan would have to discontinue its expansionism. Instead, the sanctions made the Japanese more determined to stand their ground. After months of negotiations between Tokyo and Washington, D.C., neither side would budge. It seemed that war was inevitable. The Japanese plan was simple: destroy the Pacific Fleet. If the fleet was destroyed, the Americans would not be able to fight back as Japan's armed forces expanded across the Pacific. On December 7th, after months of practice and planning, the Japanese launched their attack. However, the Japanese had failed to destroy the entire Pacific Fleet. All of the fleet's aircraft carriers were away from the home base at Pearl Harbor on December 7th. Moreover, the Pearl Harbor assault had left the base's most vital onshore facilities, oil storage depots, repair shops, shipyards, and submarine docks, intact. As a result, the U.S. Navy was able to rebound relatively quickly from the attack. After the Pearl Harbor attack, and for the first time after years of discussion and debate, the American people were united in their determination to go to war. The Japanese had wanted to provoke the United States to agree to lift the trade embargoes and economic sanctions against them. Instead, they had pushed their adversary into a global conflict that ultimately resulted in Japan's first seizure by a foreign power. On December 8th, the day after the attack, Congress approved Roosevelt's declaration of war. 3 days later, allied with Japan under the Tripartite Pact of 1940, the other nations of the Axis powers, Germany and Italy, declared war against the United States. For the second time, Congress reciprocated. More than 2 years after the start of the conflict, the United States had entered World War II.
So right away I left, and everybody left. Went home and told my parents to turn on the radio, and then we heard it that it was Pearl Harbor had been attacked.
Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The American people in their righteous might will win through to absolute victory.
I decided to enlist in the Marines because they advertised you could choose what field you wanted to be in. And I was interested in radio because I had worked at a radio store. I didn't know that my brother had also done that. So afterwards there was a little piece in the paper about him and I enlisting, and we didn't know each other were going to do it. You were put in what was called platoons, maybe 45, 50 guys. And then you took what was called boot training, which was more or less just marching and keeping step together and following commands and that sort of thing. And then it was we had to go to it was called Camp Matthews at the time for gunnery practice. Learn how to throw a grenade and shoot at a target.
Begin as they advance. Machine guns always on the ready. Artillerymen back up the infantry, blasting the Japs from behind.
After that, you were given a choice of what you wanted to do, and that was part of the deal when you enlisted. And so I chose to go into radio because I had worked at a store where they sold radios and repaired them, and it was a different radio in Marines was different than where I had been working in the store. So I actually was in what was called a radio intelligence platoon, which was the object was to copy Japanese code, which I had to learn too. I went to a school down there, learned the Morse code. Well, he went into paratroopers and trained in Camp Pendleton, I think out in California. I was aboard a ship called the Rochambeau. It was an old French liner that we commandeered, and we went zigzagging down to Noumea in Caledonia. I can't tell you even where it's at now, but it was down near New Zealand and Australia. Horrible place. And of course it was a stepping off place to move on to another island. So I eventually went to Guadalcanal, where we set up for training there. And let's see, I remember camping under the palm trees, coconut palms, and that's the only thing. It rained so much there. So we eventually got trained and got all of our equipment, and we headed for Guam, with the Japanese had invaded, and we were to take it back. So it wasn't really like an invasion, but it was a just capture our own possession back. And the thing of it was that Guam was in the Solomon Islands, and the Saipan had been a little rougher to take back or invade. So we were held off for a month. We almost ran out of food, had to go back to Pearl Harbor and get restocked up, and then came back, and by that time we could get ashore on Guam. He was on Solomon Islands, Bougainville and Vella, and he got injured there. And of course, I think I was there at the same time, but I never knew he went through there. And so he was furloughed back home. But I was in the, first time I had to go over the shore and go over the boat in this rope ladders, get on a boat, which is a little tricky because the waves are running up and down. I got ashore there, and there was still dead Japanese laying around. They had not disposed of yet. He was determined to go back. He had to be with his boys, he said. Well, I know, I had seen, before we went in, before I went in, at first they would show pictures on the television. And I remember him showing pictures of dead Marines floating on the water at Tarawa. And later they wouldn't permit him to show that. but it was, you know, you didn't want to see that. Those Japanese soldiers were, if anybody's seen a dead body that's laid for 3 days, it's all bloated up and full of worms. Not a pretty sight. And we had, there was 2 of us that had what's called ponchos, and we made put them together and made a place to dug out a little bit and dug up a trench around it where the water would run out. And those bodies weren't too close, too far from us. But they got them out of there after a day or so. I guess it was USS Rochambeau, and we had to keep zigzagging down, and of course we were down in the hold, and you never knew if a torpedo hit you, you'd never know it because you'd be gone in a second, I think. But fortunately, there were none patrolling at that time. We were getting ready for the next invasion. That happened to be Iwo Jima at the time. And I lucked out because I was stationed aboard ship, copying code down in a radio room. I couldn't hear anything. The only thing I was and on the day they took Mount Suribachi on Iwo Jima, there was a big hullabaloo about that. You know, you could hear it clear over the ocean, you know. That was the 23rd of February, and my brother, it's my brother, probably saw that, you know, that Suribachi had been captured. I remember a friend of mine, close buddy, said I threw my phones off, and I said my brother's been killed. Well, he says, get them phones back on. He says, we'll check in on it later. So we did about 10 days later, and it proved that my brother was killed. And I guess he took some pictures of me kneeling by my brother's grave side. And later, all those who were buried there were returned to somewhere, I think it was, they were returned, and he was buried in Scandinavian Cemetery.
You said when you knew that he passed away, you took off your headset. Now, did you hear something? Or did you just have a feeling?
I had a feeling. Yeah. Can't explain it. He could have probably avoided going back. But knowing Don, he was pretty loyal to the men that he had under him. And by the way, this is my brother's wife. He left a diary, and I somehow I got it. I think I stole it, but in there, anytime he had South Cynthia, it was a good day and good night, he said. So she had a good relationship with Don, my brother, and well, we knew each other before. We had been sending letters occasionally back and forth, and she, of course, didn't know Don had died, and I kind of tried to, in a roundabout way, let him know about it, how serious the war was over there. Eventually, that she found out that Don had died, and I think I told her one time if she ever needed somebody to write to, I'd be glad to write back to her. So we did write back and forth almost every day, I guess. But
on D-Day +10, I was granted permission to land to see if I could find my brother. I could not get oriented or find directions to the 26th Marine location. I did find the cemetery, which had already grown very large. I decided to walk through and started to find familiar names and began to feel uncomfortable. I had met some of his buddies, and I soon found his name amongst the crosses. He had been killed February 24th, 1945. My first thoughts were concerned for the loss my parents and his wife would feel. I made my way back to the ship, told my buddies, and the next day a good friend and fellow radioman, Russell C.W. Crom, went back with me to take the pictures. It was difficult not being able to write home about his death. The censors would not allow it, and I didn't want to be the one to tell the bad news. So I waited, writing about generalities, until I learned they had received the dreaded news. I knew Cynthia before she was married to Don, and she and I had written occasional letters back and forth. I knew she loved Don very much, and it would be a loss she would feel for a long time. I did feel a sympathy that was deeper than ordinary, and I thought if I wrote to her on a regular basis, it would fill a small void in her life. As the days passed and the letters were exchanged, we began to reveal more of our feelings for each other. I began to think I should try to fill a larger void in her life in the years ahead. I know the thought that I loved her began to take hold in my mind before her thoughts of loving me did. As the weeks and months passed, we were writing every day to each other with no commitment for what we would do after I returned home. The atomic bomb changed everyone's life, as it did mine. Within 2 weeks, I was on my way home from WWII, Hawaii. There was a 1-month furlough, which Cynthia and I spent together, a month of duty at Philadelphia Naval Yards, mustering out on October 29, 1945, and then home to stay.
I came home and first thing I did was grab her and kiss her, which I guess wasn't the right thing to do. Because somebody said, "He's kissing her." Like I was committing a sin, I guess. But anyway, I had to talk her into marrying me.
I was able to persuade Cynthia to marry me on June 1st, 1946, and together we have 5 wonderful children. Our firstborn son we named Larry Donald Johnson as a living tribute to Don. We've been living together for 56 plus years.
You had written in your letter, one of them, and asked if you could take care of me for the rest of your life.
And this is the end of the story. I married my brother's wife and still try not to think of what he missed as I savor the life he could not have. Keith W. Johnson.
Anything else?
No, other than my wife is my nurse, and she feeds me, or she prepares all the meals, does all the cleaning. I couldn't ask for anything better. I know she still loves my brother, but that's okay.
How long have you been married?
67 years.
You must have had a good argument for her to marry you.
No, I didn't. We would go to shows together with her parents and sister and our brother-in-law, and afterwards we'd do a lot of kissing. And I shouldn't say anymore, I guess.